The city was the machine, but the machine ran on fire. And fire has an enemy. It comes from the sky. The city had walls. The fire only had us. That turned out to be enough. Plausible reconstruction. You are wet. You have been wet for days. The fire is smaller than it was yesterday. Your hands do not want to work. Your child is shaking, and it is not because of fear. It is because of cold. Every few minutes you feed the fire, the only dry thing you have left. You have been saving it. So has everyone. Outside, the rain has not stopped for a week. This is not a storm. This is the weather. And the weather has decided you should be cold. You take turns sleeping. One of you stays awake, feeding the flame, guarding the small circle of dry ground. In the morning, the rain is still there. It is always still there. We build our story of ancient survival around ice and predators and hunger. Rain does not make the list, but ask anyone who has been wet and cold for days. Documented. Hypothermia kills. Wet skin loses heat about 25 times faster than dry skin. A band with no fire, no dry clothes, and no dry ground has no good answer to days of relentless rain. The cold comes for you slowly. It feels like tiredness first, then it feels like not caring anymore. That is the part nobody tells you about the rain. It does not roar. It does not charge. It just keeps falling until you forget what warm feels like. Rain was the quiet killer of the ancient world. Predators you could see. Winter you could prepare for. A week of rain could simply arrive. Learning to control fire may be one of the most important things humans ever did. It cooks, it warms, it keeps predators away. It also dies in the rain. Wet wood is difficult to burn. Wet tinder is difficult to light. Wet ground steals the heat. A family that loses its fire in weather like this loses cooking, warmth, light, and protection all at once. They lose the thing that made the dark safe. Documented. Hearths go deep into our past. Around them, people cooked, warmed themselves, and gathered. A fire was not just technology, it became the center of a living space. Lose the fire, and you lose the room where your family lived. That is why dry wood was worth more than gold. There was no such thing as gold. The question of the wet week was never about food, it was about the fire. When did we first control fire? Documented. The use of fire is very old, but the early evidence is messy. A site called Kubifora has baked earth from around 1.6 million years ago. It might be a campfire. It might be a natural burn. The honest answer is, we do not know. Plausible. Our ancestors first used fire they found burning, a wildfire, a lightning strike, and scavenged the embers. Then somebody kept an ember alive long enough to carry it, and then, much later, somebody made a spark on purpose. Documented. Flint and iron pyrite can make fire. So can a wooden drill, spun between the hands. Try it once. Most of us cannot. Our ancestors turned that impossible trick into ordinary life. Imagine the first person who ran toward fire instead of away from it. That is the moment this whole story begins. Fire then did something strange. It started changing our bodies. Plausible? Cooked food is easier to digest, more calories, less chewing. Some researchers link that to bigger brains and smaller teeth. Our species may have grown the way it did because of what fire made edible, and every one of those early fires could be killed by rain. Here is something most people do not know. Documented. People have carried fire from place to place using smoldering material and burning brands. Plausible reconstruction. Through a wet landscape that meant somebody protecting the ember, feeding it, and checking it again and again. Fire is heavy, not in weight, in attention. The ember inside is the size of a thumb. In weather like this, it might be the most valuable thing they're carrying. That is the strange math of the wet world. Carrying fire through weather like this was a job for someone who did not sleep much. Plausible reconstruction. Someone walked ahead, keeping the brand shielded from the wind. When it dimmed, they stopped and fed it dry grass until it breathed again. That is the quiet heroism the stories never mention. The people who kept the fire alive were the people who kept the dry things dry. Documented, hearths were protected. Embers were banked in ash to burn slowly through the night. Plausible, dry wood was cached under bark, in hollow trees, in shelters, because wet seasons taught that dry things are treasure. A shelter is not just a roof. It is a dry box for the things that keep you alive: water, food, tinder, the ember itself. And sometimes the best shelter was not a cave at all. a hollow tree, a rock ledge, a tent of hides with a fire at the center. Documented, people used caves and rock shelters for a very long time. Plausible. The wet seasons made them matter more. A dry place with water close by is the old recipe for staying alive. The rain made shelter about more than keeping people dry. The fire was the heart of the shelter. Rain that does not stop becomes something else. The ground soaks, the streams swell, the river remembers its old bed. Documented, real floods have drowned real landscapes. 15,000 years ago, glacial lakes burst in North America. The water that poured out carved the scablands. Geologists call it the Missoula floods. Whatever you imagine, think bigger. One of the oldest surviving written flood stories comes from Mesopotamia. The Epic of Gilgamesh says the gods sent rain for 7 days and nights. 7 days. And it was not the only culture to remember catastrophic water, and a family by a river, a week into the rain, did not need a god to tell them what the water was doing. You watch the water climb the bank all day. You move your dry things higher, you move them higher again. Then you carry the ember to the high ground, and you wait. The river does not hate you. It does not know you exist. That is the part that stays with you. The water that takes your shelter takes it without anyone deciding anything. And when it finally drops, the world is different. The landmarks are gone. The trails are gone. You rebuild from what you carried. Food could be replaced. A dead fire in a wet world was harder. Flood traditions appear in cultures across the world. Documented. Some contain strikingly familiar motifs: survivors, boats, birds, mountains, and a world transformed by water. But that does not mean they all remember the same flood. Maybe the simpler explanation is more human. Floods happened everywhere. A river that drowns your village is a day your grandchildren will not forget. A real flood can become a story. Tell that story for generations, and details change. A river can become a god. A disaster can become judgment. A flood can become the flood. Memory can keep the core. Something terrible happened to the water. Documented. Some researchers have suggested one real flood, the Black Sea filling up thousands of years ago. The evidence is contested. We do not know. Speculative. There may be no single flood behind all the myths. There may just have been rain and rivers and people who remembered. Now listen to one of the best ones. The Bunun people of Taiwan tell of a giant snake blocking the river, flooding the world. People flee to the highest mountain. They are freezing. They need fire. A toad tries to fetch it. A deer tries. Both fail. Then a blackbird flies across the sea, comes back with fire, and its beak and talons burn red. It is a myth. We know that. But notice what the story says. In the flood, what people needed most was fire. Maybe that is all a flood myth needs: water, survivors, and someone who remembered. Here is what we can reasonably infer. Rain did not necessarily invent any of these things. But once humans depended on fire, wet weather created the same problems again and again. Keep tinder dry, protect the hearth, store fuel, build shelter, and if your fire dies, find another one. And that creates another problem. When a band's fire died and another band's fire was burning, the question was not whether to knock on the shelter. It was whether the people inside would let you in. Strangers were a risk, but letting a stranger near your fire on a wet night might be a risk worth taking. We cannot prove that rain taught humans to share fire with strangers. But once survival depended on a flame, another group's hearth was not just warmth. It was an opportunity. A shared ember is a promise. You give someone fire, and they carry your warmth with them. I am not saying rain invented manners, but needing someone else's fire probably encouraged a certain amount of politeness. They celebrated dry wood. You complained about the dryer. Same water, different century. You are allowed to complain. The dryer is good. So what did ancient humans do when it rained all week? They kept the fire alive. They kept the dry things dry. They watched the water and remembered what it could do. And when their fire was too small, they found people who would share theirs. The ember that crossed the wet world is still with us. Not the same flame, the same habit. Keep it dry, keep it alive, pass it on. Tonight, if it rains, you will probably curse it for ruining your plans. Somewhere in the past, someone watched the same rainfall while guarding a spark so their family could see the sun rise. Different fire, same reason. The rain was never the enemy, the cold was, and fire was the answer. It still is. But keeping fire alive was only the beginning. Eventually, humans learned to make it hotter. Hot enough to change stone. Hot enough to change what the world was made from, and that led to metal. How did ancient humans discover iron? Subscribe for more stories about your ancient body and your modern life. The fire is still burning. This is the old human.